Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yes, sir.
Dr. Jeffrey, would you come forward, please? We are eager to hear from you. And if you would, as you come forward, turn the microphone on and introduce yourself to the committee members here.
Thank you. My name is Christina Jeffrey. I got my doctorate at the University of Alabama in political science, and while in the process, started teaching American government. So I've been teaching American government since 1969. I've taught in Alabama, Georgia, Turkey, Germany, and South Carolina. I am the president of the South Carolina Association of Scholars, which is an affiliate of the National Association of Scholars. The president of the National Association of Scholars is Peter Wood. And Peter Wood wrote you a wonderful letter, and I'd like to read it. It'll be about 4 minutes.
Please.
Dear Chairman Taylor, my name is Peter Wood, and I serve as president of the National Association of Scholars. Before this, I earned a doctorate in anthropology from the University of Rochester, was a tenured member of the anthropology department at Boston University, and served as provost at King's College in New York City. NAS is a network of scholars and citizens united by our commitment to academic freedom, disinterested scholarship, and excellence in higher education. As part of our mission, we support required education of America's founding documents and principles for all our students, with the goal of producing well-educated, responsible citizens. NAS strongly supports Senate Bill 35 and urges the committee to do the same without any additional amendments. And as an aside, I think we need a government course and a history course at both levels. You can't, to get that whole picture of Reconstruction, you need that in a history course. NAS strongly supports Senate 35. America's founding texts encapsulate the very essence of our country. Indeed, the three documents in question, the U.S. Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, and the Federalist Papers, form the bedrock upon which all else in our nation rests, including the role and structure of government, the inalienable rights of men, and the union of states. To teach these core principles to students is to impart the most fundamental knowledge of what it means to be an American citizen. Similarly, depriving our youth of this vital education is tantamount to stripping them of their national identity. As others supporting Senate Bill 35 have pointed out, children are not born with a knowledge of the American founding. It must be taught. Contrary to what critics may claim, primary and secondary school is not sufficient to provide this instruction due to the lack of depth inherent in these levels of education. However, a truly deep and substantive study of America's founding documents can and must occur in higher education. Our nation's future leaders cannot be expected to lead effectively if they lack the essential knowledge of the country they serve. Some students say, I'm going to be in international relations. I don't need all this American stuff. When you get into a group of internationals and you don't know your history and you don't know your government, they consider you an idiot because they do know it. The education is therefore the responsibility of all reputable colleges and universities, a duty that does not expire based on the year in which we live. Indeed, South Carolina's 95-year-old law is no less relevant today than when it was written. What President Pastides calls archaic, we call essential. Even so, the writers of Senate Bill 35 have accommodated 10 of Pastides' original objections. The modernized version of the law would still require USC students to complete a course on the founding texts, with some exceptions. However, President Pastides' 11th objection is wholly unacceptable. Removing a required exam from this course would give instructors a free pass to ignore the text. They could teach the Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, Federalist Papers in one class session and proceed to do other things the rest of the semester. Students probably wouldn't even come to the Constitution talk if they knew they weren't going to be examined on it. An exam is the only way to ensure that instructors follow the law and teach this course in an honest and thorough manner. These measures are not meant to imply a cynical or pessimistic view of South Carolina educators, but rather to guarantee that all USC students and students in South Carolina receive the education they deserve. The lack of accountability caused by the removal of an exam requirement is glaringly obvious and exactly what those advocates want. One must question why this objection was raised in the first place. It seems that the motivation is to create a loophole through which instructors can effectively avoid the requirement. In addition, that must be rejected. The South Carolina State Legislature now has the opportunity to mandate an essential education of America's founding documents for USC students and thereby equip them to lead and serve their country well. We urge the committee to pass Senate Bill 35. Thank you for this opportunity to testify. And I have extra copies if anybody.
Well, we would like those very much, and we'll get those. If you hand them up here, if you don't mind, just hand them up, and we'll take them from you. But I'd also, if you'll step back there, I'd also like to ask you, thank you for reading that letter. Do you have anything from your viewpoint, personal viewpoint, to add to that? You'll need to touch your red button again there.
I was teaching in Alabama when the students who were coming to me had studied African American history. And I could not, I can't tell you the difference that it made. The students who had not taken African American history were not as good students in my American government class because they didn't know history. If you study African American history, you are getting American history. And those students were well prepared for a college class in American government. I think we need history and government at both levels. One reinforces the other.
Well, it may not shock you, or it may. We don't know each other well, but S.35, as it's written, waters down the bill that we've had in place for 95 years.
I think the bill was wonderful. The 95-year-old bill was
well,
fine.
I do too. And somehow along the way, and we're going to ask others who come up and talk about this, is how did we get off track? Because the legislatures of past, starting 95 years ago and then during the 60s and 70s, revised this bill, and they never watered it down, but all of a sudden now we take it from 6 hours to 3 hours. And I guess that is what we call a great accommodation to our universities along the way. You said something else. You said it ought to be taught as government class and a history class. I couldn't agree more with that.
Well,
here I am. I sound like that real fundamentalist guy.
Well,
If
you want the man on the street to be able to answer those questions that people put in their faces all the time, what does the Fourth Amendment mean? If you're going to have an educated citizenry that we once had, the one-room schoolhouses taught these facts,
right,
and the history and the government. So I would like them to take that 95-year-old law and expand the high school requirement. Mm-hmm. It has the history and the government at the college level. Why not get the history and the government at the high school level? Not everybody goes to college, right?
I think we may find in some other testimony here how they're going to go about administering this, and we'll find that illuminating as well. But thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you very